All right, this section is dealing with the human endocrine system. And if you've not heard of that, basically, the endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands. And those glands release chemicals that are called hormones into the bloodstream. We're going to talk a little bit first about what a hormone is. Also, the endocrine system is really an important system because the functions of all of the body systems are controlled by the interaction between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So those two systems together control all of the functions of the body systems. So what is a hormone? Let's look at that first. A hormone is a chemical that is released in one part of an organism that affects another part. Hormones convey information to other cells in the body. They give instructions about metabolism, growth, development, behavior. And hormones are released by endocrine glands, and they travel in the bloodstream and enter a target cell where they bind to a receptor. Let's look at a few different types of hormones, two different types, steroid hormones and amino acid hormones. And they differ in their function, and we're going to look at how they function. Steroid hormones, let's start with those. Those are made from lipids, and they diffuse freely into the cells through the cell membrane. So here's an example. Here's our steroid hormone. It diffuses freely through that cell membrane because it is nonpolar, and it goes through the lipid bilayer, if you remember all of that from our cell sections. Then the steroid hormone will at that point bind to a receptor. Here's our steroid hormone, here's the receptor, the steroid hormone binds to it, and we get a hormone receptor complex they are bound together. Then that complex enters the nucleus, right here, if this is our nucleus inside the cell. And inside the cell, it then activates messenger RNA molecules, so special RNA molecules to synthesize very specific proteins inside the nucleus. And here is a different kind of hormone. The amino acid hormone is made from amino acids, and it does not cross the plasma membrane freely. So instead of the steroid hormone mechanism, it has a different mechanism. Here's our amino acid hormone. It binds to the receptors that are embedded in the plasma membrane of the target cell. So we have a hormone receptor that's embedded inside of this cell membrane, and our amino acid hormone will bind to that receptor. That receptor in turn will activate an enzyme inside of the cell. It can also activate ion channels that are across the membrane to cause other reactions to happen. So both steroid and amino acid hormones controls what goes on inside of a target cell. So just a quick review, the endocrine system is made up of endocrine glands that release hormones into the bloodstream, and all of the functions of all of the body systems are controlled by interactions between the nervous and the endocrine systems. So let's look more specifically at how the endocrine system functions. Let's look at two important organs. The hypothalamus, it is a portion of the brain that connects the endocrine and the nervous systems. Here is a picture of the human brain, and here is the hypothalamus. It receives messages from other areas of the brain and from internal organs. When the hypothalamus senses change in homeostasis, it stimulates the pituitary gland, and here's the pituitary gland right below the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus secretes amino acid hormones. Those are the kinds of hormones that it secretes. Now, let's look at the pituitary gland. It is the main gland of the endocrine system located in the skull just beneath the hypothalamus. It's controlled completely by the hypothalamus. They are connected by nerves and blood vessels, And the pituitary gland will respond to these messages from the hypothalamus. It will secrete amino acid hormones itself, or it will stimulate other glands to release theirs. The glands that are controlled by the pituitary gland are thyroid, adrenal, and all of the glands associated with reproduction. So that's a very important relationship. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, and it in turn controls other glands in the endocrine system. So now let's look at these major endocrine glands. Here's a diagram showing where these glands are located, as well as a key. And if you'll notice, the amino acid hormones are secreted by glands that have a box around them in blue. Steroid hormones are secreted by glands that are boxed in red. So you'll notice that here we have the hypothalamus that we just discussed, the portion of the brain that controls the pituitary gland. It secretes amino acid hormones. It also synthesizes a couple of different hormones, antidiuretic hormones, and also oxytocin that contracts the uterus during childbirth. The pituitary gland is another amino acid hormone producer. It stores hypothalamus hormones, and it secretes growth hormone. The thyroid and parathyroid glands, you can see they also secrete amino acid hormones, and these are some of the hormones they secrete. Adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are right on top of the kidneys, and there are two different kinds of adrenal glands. One of them secretes amino acid hormones, and one secretes steroid hormones. We're going to talk about that a little bit below. Just a look at the female sex hormones and male sex hormones are secreted by the ovary for female and testes for males. Those are steroid hormones rather than amino acid hormones. So let's take a look at the adrenal glands. Adrenal glands are really important because they prepare your body for stressful situations, a fight or flight situation. The outer portion of the adrenal glands secretes the steroid hormones. Those are glucocorticoids and aldosterone. Those both cause an increase in the available glucose, and they raise the blood pressure, preparing the body to fight or flee. The inner portion of the adrenal gland secretes amino acid hormones, specifically epinephrine, often referred to as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Both of these increase heart rate, blood pressure, rate of respiration, efficiency of muscle contractions, and blood sugar levels. Again, they prepare the body to either fight or flee in a very stressful situation. Now let's take a look at one more important mechanism used by the endocrine system, and that is negative feedback control. Hormones or their effects are fed back in a loop to inhibit the original signal. So we see that loop right here, and we're going to look at this example here. The example is when your body is actively growing, your blood glucose levels are slightly lowered as the growing cells use up all that sugar to grow. So when that happens, there is a low blood sugar situation, and the hypothalamus detects that. So the very first step, the hypothalamus detects low blood sugar. It then stimulates the pituitary to release human growth hormone. HGH stands for human growth hormone. When the pituitary gland releases that human growth hormone then binds to the receptors on membranes of liver cells. Here's a picture of the liver. It stimulates the liver to convert glycogen into glucose and release glucose into blood. So that human growth hormone stimulates the production of glucose via the liver. The next step is that increased sugar in the blood, that signal will be sent back to the hypothalamus, and that will slow the stimulation of the pituitary. So you see, as the glucose is produced, the hypothalamus recognizes that and does not stimulate the pituitary to release more human growth hormone. So that is negative feedback control. In essence, the effect of the original signal is fed back to the hypothalamus, and it inhibits that original signal. That's what we call negative feedback control. So some advanced ideas. What are some other examples of negative feedback control? The example given is not the only example. There are many other examples of that. What is the specific function of some of the other hormones mentioned in this section? I didn't go into the thyroid or parathyroid hormones. What are some of the functions of those hormones, or the female and male sex hormones? We didn't look into that in detail. So I look forward to seeing what you come up with and some of your ideas.